So as I've skipped ahead, added the doors, windows, the remaining materials, the next step that we want to do in creating our design is to create our porch. And if I bring up the initial design for the ranch style, you'll see that the porch is open. There's some column supports. So I'm going to use an invisible wall to create that porch. And then I'll move on and put the foundation and the roof on. So with the invisible wall, let's tile our screens here. I'm going to tile vertically so we can see both the views. And the invisible wall tool here, I'm going to snap on the corner of the far right hand side. As I'm dragging out this wall, I know it's small on your screen, but there is a dimension being displayed. And if I press the Tab key while I'm doing that, I get the dialog here that I can actually enter in a specific dimension. So I want that wall to be 6 feet. And there is a negative sign in there because I'm drawing down and away from the screen on the Y coordinate position. That's going to create a wall that's exactly 6 feet out, and we'll just drag that until I get an extension snap. And then if I zoom in here just a little bit, I'm going to go in approximately 2 feet, but again, if I press the Tab key and I come in here and put 24 inches, I can get that exact. And then I want to go and pull this wall out, and I'm just grabbing this diamond to create that shape. I'm going to go out 14 feet again, so I'm going to just press the Tab key and enter in 14 feet. Again, that's a negative value because I'm going to the left-hand side. And so I've got that set to be 14 feet. Now I'm just going to simply pull that back until I get an extension snap off of that wall. And then we'll pull that over to be 10 feet. Again, press the Tab key here and enter in 120 for 10 feet. And then finally we'll pull that until we get an extension snap off the furthest wall on the back. And then we'll just snap that into place. So now that I have the invisible wall set up here, I'm going to highlight in here just by clicking. And I'm going to open up this room, and I'm going to come in and choose porch from my available options. Check the the structure area. And in this case, I want to make sure that the finish is concrete. And it looks like floor supplied by the foundation room below will work. And I'll also check that it's a monolithic slab. Now the next step that I'm going to do for the design here is let me go ahead and build our foundation. Under the floor menu, there is an option for Build Foundation. And when you build the foundation, you can build it with footings, build it on pier, or build it with a monolithic slab. And that's the option that I'm going to choose for this particular design. And the other option that I'm going to choose is Automatic Rebuild Foundation. And that means that any time that I make a change, if I move a wall out a few feet or add on to this, it will automatically rebuild the foundation. So I'm just going to check that box and we'll generate our foundation. So now you can see that here is our porch that's come along. And by the way, as we're moving along in the model, at any point in the design, if you want to go into the materials list and run a calculation, you can get your materials list calculated, and it continues to generate all of the materials that you have. So in the case of the foundation, you can see here is that category. It works just like Excel. If we come down and we find the foundation, it looks like we've got right now about 39 yards. If you put a price in there, let's say it's $100 a yard, it'll calculate that out for you. So the materials list is dynamic. As your model evolves, the materials list will update. Close that materials list. And let's bring up our two views at the same time here. So the next step that I'm going to do for our design here is I'm going to add the roof. And let me close our 3D view down. And right now I'm on floor 0. If I move up a floor, you can see that. And at any point, you can also do a 3D overview. If I press the camera tool, here is a view of that. And if I press the glasshouse option, these are just filters on the different cameras. So you can toggle through these different views. Glasshouse allows you to see through the structure. And when we built that foundation, the default was for the footing to be 16 inches. Also, you'll notice that there is a footing going through the middle of the house. I'd actually marked that wall a bearing wall, and that's why it generated the footing. Close the 3D view. And we'll go up to the main floor. Now, the porch that we have, one of the options I want to make sure that I have checked is that there is a ceiling and a roof over the porch. So when I generate that, it's going to have the ceiling and the roof generated just like in the rendering that we have here. In the roof options, we'll come over, and there are a variety of options you can build with the automatic functions in Chief Architect. There are also manual roof tools that you can use to create really any style of roof. But I think you'll find the automatic tools allow you to create a variety of roof styles. In the main roof tab here, I'm going to change the pitch. The typical default that I use is 8 and 12. I'm going to change that to be 5 and 12. And again, I'm going to check this box that says automatically rebuild the roof. So if I move a wall at any point in the design, it will automatically regenerate the roof for me, and I won't have to open this dialog up and save myself a little bit of time. There are other options in here. I'm going to leave the defaults for the overhang, eave, gable. There are several other options in here if you want exposed rafter tails, ridge caps. I actually have a default ridge cap that I use. And the materials, check that. In the roof material, I'm actually using in my default a metal roof. You can always change this at any point along your design, but if you use something, if you find yourself saying, I always do this, then you can set that as your default, and then every time you build something, it's already set up. So let me go back into the roof, check automatic build roofs, and we'll generate that roof. And when we do that, I'm going to get a message that says that layer, Chief Architect's layer based, if that layer is not turned on, would you like to display it? Let's go ahead and turn that on, and we can see what the roof is going to look like in the plan view. And with a 3D camera overview, press that overview camera, you can see what the roof looks like. Again, we built it as a 5 and 12 pitch roof. If you change your mind with the roof, again, I mentioned we have manual roof tools. You can grab these edges, you can modify it. You can also select a wall, and you'll find an option to toggle that to a gable wall, and you can toggle it back to a hip wall. You can also go back into the dialog, and we can change the style of roof as well. I'm going to create the columns and the entry in the next step for the design. If you look at the aspect we're looking for in the columns, it's somewhat of a custom look, and while I could browse in the library and find a variety of columns I have, or maybe even find a manufacturer, it may not be the exact thing that I'm after. So I'm going to show you how the CAD tools in Chief Architect can be used to create that column. Then I'm going to move on and create the entry. I'll show you how that we can go through and do that. So if I go back into the program and close my 3D view, I'm going to zoom in to the corner of this porch. And with the slab tool, I'm going to create a rectangular shape in here. And I'm going to go ahead and set the dimensions something like 30 inches. And we'll make that 16 inches. So all I'm doing is clicking on the dimensions there. And I've got that positioned. And if I double click on it, what I want to set the elevation to be 20 inches high. So this is the first component of that slab. and I'm going to make it the thickness also 20 inches. So now I've got a block that's 20 inches high and about 30 inches wide. The next step is I'm going to create a copy of that, and I'm actually going to use a concentric copy. So while I'm using the copy tool that was found in the menu, I'm going to hold down the Control and C function, and I'm going to create a copy. And again, I'm not going to worry too much about the dimension in here, just slightly larger than the base. Double click on that, and in this case I want the thickness to be 6 inches and the elevation at the top to be 26 inches. By the way, I can do this in a 3D view, a split screen, and you can see it as you're creating that as well. But before I do that, let's add our column that will sit on top of that, and I'm going to do a search in here, and I'm just going to come in here and type column bungalow and find the column that I have saved, and I'm going to place that column in here and one in here. Again, not being too precise about that, so let's grab both of these columns. Perhaps let's use the center tool. We'll center that up and grab both of them and center it this way as well. So I've got those approximately centered on top of the base. And if we double click and open up those columns, let's lower that down to 78 inches. And now I can take a 3D overview and we can see what the columns look like. So pretty easy to use the slab tool to create the look. Now the next step is, let's clear out our search. Let's open up our library and let's find a brick material, and we'll apply it to the lower portion and maybe another color that we can apply to the upper color. So again, in my favorites folder inside of my library, I've created a materials folder. These are things that I use a lot. I've got my brick material. Once I find it, use the material painter and simply click on the object to change the color. And let's see if we can find a color. And we'll paint the upper part of that. And so there's our custom column. Now the great thing about Chief Architect is once you've created an object like this, I can select the different components of it. I can block it. See a block command down here in the menu. Make architectural block. I can block that, and then I can add that into the library and reuse it in future use. And if we come into the library here, you can see that I've created this block right in here, and when I pull it out of the library, I can click and place it, and this block happens to have a different material on it, and if I want to make it match, you can always customize it as you've placed it. So pretty easy to create that. Let's go ahead and close the 2D view or the 3D view, and let's create a copy of this element. I'm going to delete the block that we created, and I'm going to use the one that is a little bit more put together. We'll just snap that into place. And before I make copies of this, I'm actually going to open that object up by double clicking on it. And I'm going to assign that layer to be on the framing layer. Just bring that over here. And I'm going to create a, right now it's on the architectural blocks layer. I'm going to create a copy of that set, and I'm just going to call it framing column. So when we get into the framing section, it'll be easy to display that. So I've got that set up to be on the framing columns layer, and we'll just make sure that that's turned on, that new framing layer. And it is turned on. So now what I'm going to proceed to do is I'm going to create a copy of that around the design. So I'm going to use the copy tool. I'm going to use the reflect about, and I'm going to come in here. I'm going to create a copy there. I'll just slide another copy over here between these two doors. And take me just a second here. We'll create another copy, slide that over here. Again, I'm not going to worry about being too precise here for the purpose of the demo. And we'll place one more copy over there. And perhaps we'll rotate one around off this side. We'll zoom in here a little bit, snap it into place, and use the copy, reflect about the center. So I've got the basic column set up. Take our 3D overview, and now that should help support that porch a little better. Now the next step that I want to do is I want to go ahead and create the roof. So let's create a split screen. I'm going to use Shift F6 on my keyboard here. Let's close the library. Let's try that one more time. And if I zoom in, what I want to do is I want to create an entry. And if you look at the entry here on your image, you'll notice that the roof that is extending out over the door is slightly lower than the main roof structure. And I want to create that same look. So let's go ahead and let's create an approximate 12-foot area over the front of this entry door. And this is our entry door right here. So we created our porch with the invisible wall tool because it's somewhat hidden. And let's use that same wall tool here. I'm going to use the invisible wall, and what I'm going to do let's select this the room that we created, which is a very small room that we lowered, and let's remove the ceiling out of it so we can get rid of this attic wall that's produced from the gable. And let's also give it a name of porch, and that will clean up the material since we've already defined that for the previous porch. And we'll just check that. Yep. So we should be in pretty good shape to create the look that we're after. Okay. Now the final step that we want to do is create the columns for the entryway. And again, I would probably go ahead and create the same custom columns using the slab tool. And I've actually already done that and added them into the library. So let's go ahead and open up our library and we'll place those columns. So in my custom library, you'll see that I've got a column and I've called it Porch-Modern Bungalow. So I'm just going to come over here, grab that column. You get a preview of it. It's pretty small, but you can see a preview of it. And let's go ahead and place the column. Let's snap that into the corner. And then I'm going to use my copy and reflect about. It's a very handy tool. And we'll just reflect it around the center. I'm going to spin that around so, spin that around so the slope of it looks okay. And let me use the elevation tool, and let's take an elevation of what we have. Close the library down. So those columns are just exactly the way we created the other columns with the slab tool. And I added it into the library and made it pretty easy. Now it looks like the last thing I want to do, let's take our 3D overview and let's apply that brick material onto the columns. Columns I added in there did not have the brick material. So let's open up the library, come into the material section of the brick that I liked, and I'm going to change that to paint it for the entire plan. And I'm just going to click on that, and there is the material.